Hey guys, so today I have with me a good friend of mine, Brad Hillier, and he runs Vast Media Marketing. Now, these guys are a media buying and performance creative agency for D2C brands, and they are spending over £2 million per month across ad platforms. So today we're going to dive into his background, his story, and then some information about the media buying space and what's working in 2024 and beyond. Brad, good to have you, man.
Thanks for having me, Jordan. Appreciate it.
Cool. Well, look, the first thing I want to kind of get into is taking this right back to the beginning. How did you get started in the marketing space? Do you mind walking me through your journey to today?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no worries. So I actually started off back in corporate finance. Was initially kind of my start in the working world. Was determined to be, an investment banker. Go to London, do all of that kind of stuff. Did that for about 2.5 years. Really decided that the corporate life wasn't for me, and that I couldn't see a future in it. For myself. And decided to take a year out. And that started with going and doing a ski season. And then that moved on to meeting my now missus and going traveling around like Southeast Asia and places. And it was really on that year kind of abroad that I took that I realized, what is it that I actually want to do? Because I'd done something for 2.5 years that I, absolutely hated and couldn't wait to get away from. So it was a lot of time spent reflecting. And one of the things that always drew me into marketing was specifically TV advertising. That's actually something that I've always been very interested in and always quite curious of when growing up. And more so on the fact of just like how bad some of them were, but also just like quite interested in advertising in general. So that's kind of, where I kind of got the start from. Um, Sad to say that I got my start on a Ty Lopez social media marketing course, which is very common. But yeah, that's the thing that kind of gave me that initial boost to kick on and actually start a marketing agency.
What did you focus on when you first started? What services were you providing?
So when we first started, we were kind of, just in that like SMMA kind of space. Was looking to mainly provide the paid side of things. Never been that much of a fan of the organic side of things. But we started on, paid ads on Facebook, and we did it for, a few lead gen businesses and a few ecom businesses. Luckily enough, got to start off some, family friends that owned companies, and retailers and things, and allowed us to kind of get into their Facebook ad accounts and have a play around and start testing, things. So, straight away realized that ecom was actually the side that we really preferred versus lead gen. And really why that is because it's just so much more tangible, right? Yeah, being able to see, oh, we've spent X and made Y and done, this much in terms of like ROAS was really the thing that excited me most about it, because I've always been quite kind of like analytical when it comes to data. That's sort of like the background that I came from in corporate finance. So just immediately saw a lot of similarities and a lot of things I actually enjoyed in media buying.
What year was this when you were kind of just getting started?
So this was in 2017. So towards the back end of 2017 was when we were getting started. I think September was the month that I kind of like returned back to the UK and then went full on into setting up the agency and learning and kind of getting my start as a freelancer.
And I know kind of moving forward now, 2019, 2020 were obviously huge changes in the industry. How did your business evolve through that? And I guess up to today as well. How did it change?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed, loads in terms of, changed personally from just being me, one man band, typical agency setup, but actually just, being a freelancer for a couple of years, really. And the way it's changed now is that, we've got, more of a team. We've obviously working with a lot bigger clients than we were back then, expanded in terms of services and things as well. So yeah, there's been a lot of change in the agency. We now kind of have different departments, performance versus creative. So yeah, I'd say that's probably been the biggest change for us.
In terms of just digging into that, what are the different departments and what do they do and how does that fit into the kind of overall business mission?
Yeah, so I mean, the overall business mission really for Vast is that we are new customer acquisition focused. So unlike a lot of other agencies that, want to just look at blended metrics, we are always breaking out, new customer KPIs for our clients, like new customer ROAS, new customer CPAs, and looking at, things along the lines of contribution margin. So we are really a, total new customer acquisition partner. So we run Facebook, TikTok, we do Google, and we do all of the kind of performance-based creatives. So whether it goes from statics to existing edits to, existing video content or UGC. And we've done that for years now. So we like to position it as we come on board and we are just fully in charge of new customer acquisition for brands. And then as long as, retention and everything else is being taken care of on the back end, then, we can drive profitable growth.
Yep. I just want to dig into something because I think to some brands that may sound like you do quite a lot of different stuff, right? Different ads channels, creative as well. How does the team look to kind of one client that they're serving together? And how do they kind of interact with the client?
Yeah, so I mean, we operate in a pod structure. So I don't know if you're familiar with pod structures, but essentially, so within a pod, you have a set number of accounts that everyone in the team manages, and within the pod, we kind of within our pod structure anyway, we have a performance marketer, so media buyer, with creative strategist. We have a video editor and graphic designer, and then we also have a creative coordinator that also acts as kind of the coordination between the whole team and everything that we do, especially on the UGC side. So, and then on top of that, you'd have your project manager as well. So that's kind of how we work with clients, and we found that that's actually one of the best ways, so that we've got multiple team members on the account at any one time, and they can all use each other to deliver the best service. So for example, media buyer wants new creatives, they can be discussing kind of creative strategy with the creative strategist and making performance-based iterations off of that, and then including the other two team members to actually help fulfill on that on a weekly basis.
Okay. And is that media buyer responsible for all channels, or is there multiple media buyers if you guys are covering multiple channels?
Yeah, so it depends on the channels for the client. So for some clients we're doing creative only. Some clients we do performance mixed in with the creative on just Facebook or TikTok, or for some it might just be Facebook or Google. So yeah, there's differences in terms of the actual channel management.
Okay. And just in terms of how that service offering or team structure has evolved over time, what has changed? Like, did you guys just start off doing one channel and then add in other channels and then creative, or kind of what was the journey there, and why did you guys do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, we were always focused on just Facebook and Instagram to start with. So we were just purely, a Facebook ads agency. Start off with the media buying only, of course, and then that quickly developed into, supplying things like statics and things alongside, the media buying service. And I think that's one of the things now. I mean, I don't know how agencies are getting away with not doing creative, in this day and age, but we moved over to doing TikTok back in, it was like early 2020. So we were really early to the game on TikTok. We're an enterprise, partner agency of theirs. We've been on there for so long. We've had things like TikTok Shop, for really a long time now, because it was released in the UK first on the beta. I think that was back in November 2022 we had access to it. And then Google around the same sort of time as well. So Google was probably the one that came in last, because we've always, like I said, been more focused on the new customer acquisition side. But yeah, that's kind of how it's developed into everything. We started doing UGC the same sort of time that we took on TikTok as a channel, because we then realized that, okay, a lot of the brands that we're working with that want to get started on TikTok, they actually don't have the kind of creative production system in-house to generate the content needed to succeed there, because it is a higher barrier to entry platform. It just is.
Interesting. And I want to dig into that next. So in terms of creative, how important is it today, and can you get away with kind of minimal focus on it and just using the same content across all platforms?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's on the tip of everyone's tongues today in terms of like topics and things. Everyone's talking about creative being the 80%, 90% of the equation nowadays, with platforms kind of making it more of like they wanting to have control of the things. So you look at like PMax, you look at like Facebook's move with Advantage Plus and stuff like that as well. It's obviously clear that they are going to continue to go in that kind of direction of like trying to take the control away. I'm obviously from the performance background as a media buyer, kind of first and foremost. So I mean, I've seen the difference that pure media buying can make, and I think anyone who's been like spending over like 100K per day doesn't kind of negate the importance of the media buying. So it's anyone that's spent serious amount of money understands how important media buying is. But with that being said, as an agency and as a partner to a lot of ecom brands out there that are in the 7 and 8 figure marks, creative is key. Like, it's always going to be key. And not only is it key in terms of having the variation of creative, but it's also key in having the whole creative to performance feedback loop in place. And that's one of the most important things I think that a lot of people are actually missing. We either see brands that are not producing enough quality or quantity. We obviously brands that are producing the quantity, but it isn't really quality enough. And then we see some brands that are producing both quality and quantity, but they're not really testing and learning effectively. So they're not iterating on, best performing concepts. They're not identifying new angles based on, the data. And their creative to performance teams just aren't speaking with each other.
Is that the process of implementation, is first focus on quality, then quantity, and then the feedback loop, or is that different?
Yeah, I mean, I think always, quantity, volume negates luck is like one of the things, right? So obviously if you have volume in terms of creatives, you've got more arrows, to hit the target with, essentially, that you're going to fire. But it's about having, quality as well. And quality doesn't just mean in terms of like high production as well, because we definitely do a lot of low production stuff on purpose. And I think there's a really interesting quadrant that I've seen. Some people talk about when it comes to kind of like high versus low, and then different kind of angles within that. But I think the biggest thing is variation and seeing what works for your brand personally. You don't want to be over reliant on any one asset type. And I think also, videos can lend themselves a lot better to discovery than potentially statics can. But I love statics, and statics also, if you set an image without doing it in a video and it converts, then that's amazing. And then obviously easy to make.
Interesting. In terms of quantity, do you have, I know this is probably difficult, but is there a kind of ballpark in terms of, maybe related to brand size and kind of volume of revenue? Is there like a quantity number that you can give?
Not really, in terms of, we do everything a bit custom. Like, we have different size packages on the UGC front. To start with, we do all the statics and things, as well, just baked in with our performance anyway. The UGC is the only service that's technically separate, but we end up including that for a lot of our, bigger clients. In terms of like volume, I'm seeing, brands where we're spending, upwards of 300, 400K a month, and we're running like anywhere between like 30 to 50 creative tests a month. Now, that's not always net new. That could be, net new mixed in with iterations as well. But I wouldn't say there's any kind of, standard or set level that we're like, oh, brands between this and this need X amount of creatives. I think it's just important to ensure that you do have that in place. And obviously, TikTok requires a lot more iteration. It requires a lot more, fresh content than Facebook. And Facebook, you can have an ad that runs for, a year plus that does amazingly well for you. So, yeah.
Interesting. And I think one point I wanted to touch on there was just the process across different platforms. Will you typically start and put content out on one platform and then repurpose it for others, or is it completely separate for all the different platforms?
Yeah, obviously, each platform's different. So, a thing that people used to say a lot is that, TikTok content will work on Facebook, but Facebook content will work on TikTok is like a common thing that I'd say. And obviously TikTok being video first, is a complete difference. I think one thing I like about Facebook is the ability to, test different angles and things using statics and then build out, videos based on that kind of data as well, because you can get really quick, feedback from that. And then you can actually build out video ideas and briefs based on that data and that performance. So yeah, I think that's just the easier one to do. Do you know what I mean? I think most brands will be starting on Facebook before they're getting onto TikTok and, starting off with statics, then finding out what works, diving into kind of like the macro and then the micro kind of concepts and angles, and then just building off the back of that.
Okay. And when you say testing different angles, does that mean different kind of marketing angles and kind of pain points for the product? Or does it mean different ad formats and things like that?
Yeah, so more in terms of, what you first said there. So in terms of like angles to do with the actual products, the pain points, the concepts, within, inside of that. In terms of everything else, then like there's tons of different things you can test, right? So like, you could be talking about different styles of content. So you could be talking about before and afters, you could be talking about comparisons, you could be talking about fake podcasts, you could be talking about street style interviews. You could do we could run an ad right now. We could create one here and now for a brand. But yeah, so many different kind of styles and things to play with when it comes to the concepts.
Okay. And then just kind of moving past creative. So my next question is a bit more general in terms of the funnel. What is your approach to the funnel? Do you look at kind of the offer and the product setup? Do you look at landing pages and things like that? Or is it, your main focus is, that essentially that pre-click?
Yeah, so I mean, our kind of main focus when we onboard with people is to really get to grips more on the financial stages as well. I think that's been our main focus over the last, I would say, 12 months. I think that's the way in which, we're all heading, is that there's going to be even more marrying between finance and marketing, which is kind of, I think exciting. And that's really where we start off, I mean, you can look at eCom in a ton of different ways when you're analyzing new businesses. And obviously I'm saying we're new customer acquisition focused doesn't mean that we don't look at retention. Obviously, we very much understand, the importance of retention and LTV. And we do look at eCom as kind of like, the leaky bucket. So yeah, we make sure that all of that's in place. Obviously, we don't want to just be front loading a business with nothing but new customers, but in the end, they actually can't retain them. Because that doesn't actually lead to probably long-term profitable growth for them. So we'd look to identify that as well. But yeah, most of our time on the onboarding is spent going through the financials and modeling out kind of, what we're going to forecast and what KPIs and the break-evens and the targets that we're actually going to set.
Yeah, and I think that's very different to a lot of media buying and creative agencies, right? They're very much just focused on, this is the ROAS that we got in the account and not the full picture.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I spoke about this yesterday with a prospect actually, and they were talking about how they didn't love their agency reporting on blended metrics. And I kind of agreed with it to an extent, because I understand what they're saying, because essentially if you're bringing on a partner for a specific job, say new customer acquisition, for example, if I'm just reporting off of a blended ROAS to you, or if I'm just reporting off of that side of things, that's taking credit for a lot of the retention that's alongside with that. And also I don't have an effect on your fixed costs. So therefore what your, net profit equals out to and what your actual blended metrics, can equal out to, they aren't all on our shoulders of like what we have the effect on. So that's why we like to break out specific targets around new customer acquisition, because that is kind of our area.
No, makes sense. Is there, and I just want to kind of, I guess, preface this by saying I see brands in kind of, I guess, three buckets. First, you've got the initial journey of proving product market fit, right? 0 to 100K or that kind of rough outline. And then the next level is just kind of like, 100K to 1 million of scaling maybe different channels, adding products and things like that. And then you've got kind of 1 million plus where they're, a more stable, steady business. How do you see the approach or the game plan for those kind of different buckets or levels of business?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's obviously very different. Every brand's journey is different. I think one thing that you can be said about pretty much all of the brands there is that narrowing down and doing a few things well than trying to do lots of things average is one of the biggest things that we see. So like if you're, a small brand in the first instance that you were discussing, like breaking out from Facebook, and Google into adding channels like TikTok and Snapchat and, YouTube and things like that, it's not going to be, the best bang for your buck. You're much better actually scaling and getting the platforms right that you're on, rather than looking, for that new silver bullet, because, usually that doesn't exist and, takes away from the main focus, especially if you have a lean team as well. I think that's one of the biggest things. But yeah, small brands, it's very simple. You start narrow to go big. You think about Amazon, like Amazon, what were they originally? They were a bookstore. Exactly. Now they're an everything store. So like you look at any other brand, look at any huge brand that you might be like, oh, we would love to be like them and take inspiration from. They always started narrow before they went wide. Like they always narrow first. So I think that's the same approach. Whether you're selling hats or apparel or something, you've got to be speaking to one kind of target customer, one ICP. You've got to have your, everything very dialed into that. And then you can look to grow past that.
Is that normally one channel at that point as well?
Yeah, it's usually one channel. I mean, TikTok Shop, I think, is a completely different thing because that's kind of provided a new avenue for a lot of businesses that potentially you know, aren't like the regular fit of the mold that like, scale through Facebook or Google. So I literally would be like, it's Facebook, Google, TikTok in that order, like if I had to put an order on it. But there's obviously some outliers to that, as there always are.
Yeah. What about the next category? So businesses that have kind of proven that product market fit and they're, I guess, scaling. What's the stages there and what should they do?
So in short, doing more of what you already do well, like doing it even better. Like, have you really capped it out? Because you look at platforms like, Facebook and how scalable they are. And like, are you at true scale there? Like, are you tapping out? Like, where are you at in terms of like your, contribution margin? Like, are you at the point where if you scale any further, is it kind of like net negative overall on like a contribution margin point of view? A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't understand that. And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm the expert on that because I'm probably not. But yeah, I think it's really about just doing more of what you do already well. I think scaling from 5k to 10k a day on Facebook is almost easier than scaling from 0 to 1k or 1k to 5k. So I think it actually gets easier as you get on. It just requires having more of those systems that we were talking about earlier. So like, I think that whole creative to performance feedback loop and that whole like content house systems figured out, I think they're really important. And then obviously like the things that you said earlier as well, like if you're expanding your LTV, if you're trying to increase your average order value, are you testing more landing pages, you usually have, more tools that you can utilize. Do you know what I mean? You have more budget, you can take bigger swings with things as well. And I think that's really the name of the game when you start getting to that size.
Okay. I just want to dig in now to this feedback loop that you keep kind of bringing up and saying that it's how important it is.
Mm-hmm.
Is that lacking for most of the brands that you see that you're not working with, and what does that kind of initial implementation process look like?
Yeah, I think realistically, like how we kind of discovered this more so was when we actually got started on TikTok. We really realized that, like, okay, we're finding winners, but we're needing, fresh content to actually scale accounts. We took an account from 0 to 17.5k per day
Wow.
in spend within 14 days, which was like our biggest scaling case study ever on TikTok. So, there are people that say you see, creative fatigue a lot quicker on TikTok. You definitely do need more iterations and a lot more content of volume. So that led us into thinking like, okay, how can we make our content go further? What can we analyze from the data to actually ensure that we're making more of the right type of content rather than just like, hey, here's 30 new creatives, hope they work, which is like almost an old school way of creative testing that I think a lot of people still do. It's like, here's 10 creatives, let's throw them at the wall. 8 of them don't stick, 2 do, cool, let's throw those other 8 in the bin and then let's get another new 10 in the account next month. They're not actually testing and learning effectively. So our whole system of what we do to implement on that is we use Motion, which is a creative reportive tool for the analytics side. And that's an amazing tool for the visuals. And we show that a lot to clients on onboarding as well. We're like, when we're doing deep dives and we're looking at like, okay, what kind of asset types work best for you as a brand? Like, what's your naming conventions look like? Can we actually, see what angles and things you've been testing from that? If not, that probably needs cleaning up. And then also just going at it from that point of view. So say, for example, instead of throwing 10 new tests at the wall, you could have those 10, net new concepts. You could make variations off the bat of those. So therefore you could, turn those 10 concepts into 30 if you had, 3 variations per. And then you test those and then get the, data back on that quicker and then actually double down on what's working best. So you might identify that, okay, like variation 1, you'd be like creative 2, variation 1 is actually the best performing in terms of the hook rate. It's got the best retention. It's actually really high in terms of ROAS. You can then start to also build baselines off of your best performers on this. So we know that our like best performing ads have, for example, over a 30% hook rate. That could be one of your actual baselines that you then use as like a KPI, just like we used to do back in the day with like, cost per ad to carts and things to get early indicators on ads to see if they're going to win or not. So that's the biggest thing, I think, is implementing that. And you do that across all of your creative types as well. That's not just when it comes to video. Obviously, video has different, soft metrics that you can look at, but you do that with statics and things as well.
Okay. Are there any other kind of keys to success, I guess, that you think that we haven't covered that brands should be aware of?
I mean, there's tons in terms of like what I'm thinking creatively. I
Just,
mean,
just
there's tons in what you do as well in terms of like landing page testing, depending on the brand. I mean, fake listings huge, white listing is huge, branded partnerships are huge, and more people should be utilizing, more of those. We've got a client that we've got just on the TikTok and the creative side, and they're spending like 500K a month on Facebook, and they're not doing any whitelisting or any branded partnerships and things, and they're doing very well on Facebook. So like this is and I something that we've identified for them that's going to help pour that like fuel on the fire for them, because like it's no doubt it's going to help decrease their like new customer CPA. So yeah, I would really recommend that at the moment. I think not a lot of people are doing that.
do you want to just explain quickly what whitelisting and branded partnerships are?
Yeah, so the difference being, I mean, whitelisting is where the ad's actually coming from, like the creatives page. So, say we were doing whitelisting for my brand, and you were the creator, it would actually be showing up as like Jordan on the actual feed. So inside of Facebook, if it was a branded partnership, it would have both of our names in it, so it comes across like it's Brad with Jordan, or like that. Fake listing is essentially the whitelisting version where you own the page yourself, so it's not essentially real. You can do that with like setting up listicle style pages. You could do a fake blogger style page. You could even create a fake influencer style page. Obviously, don't steal anyone's identity. Don't recommend that. But yeah, I mean, setting it up in terms of a fake listicle style page. So having it as like a general advice page, or like a smart shopping style page, and like directing it in that way, it comes across a lot more native on the feed, and therefore it can help reduce acquisition costs.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of people use like news sites as well, or fake news sites, depending on who
Yeah,
you are.
exactly. Yeah, you can go even further into like list calls. You can do a lot of other things that you wouldn't do from the main brand page. So you could do comparisons against other brands with this type of strategy as well, that you don't really want to be doing from your main brand page, and calling people out. Some people do. And you always want to be punching up, I think, if you're doing that, because obviously you don't want to give anyone too much airtime if you don't need to. But it's a smart way to steal market share. So I've seen a few people utilize it quite well. But yeah, going back to just standard whitelisting and branded partnerships, I think that's just something that more and more people should be trying.
Yeah. Okay. And now, kind of looking to the future, what do you see the big changes coming down the pipe are for the industry?
UGC is going full circle is one of the biggest ones. We're entering the phase where it's coming back to where it originated from. So UGC originated from customer generated content, really. So it's like CGC. That's what the old UGC was. It was like, let's get content from your actual users, like from your actual customers. It's got to the point now where it's everyone's aware of it. I think it's very, yeah, exactly. Like it's coming full circle. So I think that we're going to switch back to more authentic looking, styles of ads. I mean, even ads that are coming out that are just less edited, less like music options and things on them, and come across a little bit more genuine, is stuff that we've seen very recently to work extremely well. So I think that just speaks to it, and the whole, mixing that in with the whitelisting and the branded partnerships and stuff. I think that's the combination that you want to be hitting it with, is that, it looks like authentic content coming from your customers and coming from their pages rather than your page all the time. That's the biggest thing, I think, in terms of the UGC side of things, I reckon.
Would you? I don't know if you agree with this statement, but some people would say, media buying or the platforms have become more and more like a black box. Um, does that trend continue? And I guess, do you agree with that as a statement, firstly?
What do you mean by becoming a black box?
It's a black box in the sense that there's less kind of customization options given, and
Yeah.
less media buying kind of as a role.
Yeah, I mean they're pushing towards that, right? So they're pushing for more control. They're pushing for trusting the platform more, and I think in a lot of cases that's fair enough. I think on the ad level, Facebook will its leading indicator is spend, really, and a lot of people would agree with that that premise. I think you're not going to replace media buying completely. I think you still need people that are in charge of a lot of things, but I think they're going to make it easier for people to get started on and do things like that. So yeah, I think they'll continue to push it in that fashion. I mean, they're going to keep restricting options and forcing it towards more of a campaign level approach rather than actually diving into everything.
Do you have any concerns going forward about kind of increased focus on privacy and regulation and therefore less retargeting and all this kind of stuff? What are your views on that?
I try not to. Obviously, we're in the post iOS era now. Obviously, in like the UK and Europe, we have different laws on GDPR and things like that, as you'll be aware with from probably what affects your stuff on the emails. Yeah, I try not to think about it too much. I'm sure there's more coming. I'm sure it's going to be an issue. But at the end of the day, like, this it's not going to affect the businesses out there that are still, decent brands that are doing the fundamentals well, that have a good offer, that have good products, that have good customer service. It's just going to make certain things harder and give us, agencies and media buyers more things to moan about on socials, I guess.
What are your plans with the agency going forward? What do you want to do with that?
Plan to the agency really is just to continue growth. I'd llove for us to be just known exclusively as a new customer acquisition agency, and just knowing that, okay, like if we've got everything else sorted on the back end and we're a 6 or 7 figure brand looking to go to 8 figures, these are the guys to work with. No plans to exit the agency or anything like that, just to continue growing. We keep things fairly lean in terms of like our actual client size and team size, really. Never been the one that wants to manage the agency that has 100 staff members that I don't know everyone's names and things like that. I've never really wanted that kind of a headache. Much rather keep it a lot more personal. I'm still involved in a lot of our clients accounts, and in the day to day and the meetings and things, and I couldn't really see that changing.
Okay. And outside of kind of agency life, I guess, I mean, it is kind of linked, but I know you also have a SaaS product. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so that was actually born out of a problem that we were having for ourselves as the agency. So do you know Triple Whale, the ecom platform? Yeah.
Yep.
So Triple Whale was amazing. We use it for pretty much all of our clients are on there. And there's one thing that I love about Triple Whale the most, and it is just the UI of the actual dashboard itself, and it just how clean it looks and how easy it is to just see those top line metrics that you want to see. And I've always been a little bit jealous of that when looking at our own kind of boring accounting software from zero and Google spreadsheets that we've got that are just complex and aren't automatically updating themselves and things like that. And I've always looked at Triple Whale and thought, I would love to have this for my business. Like if I could have this for my business, it would be amazing. So that's where the idea was kind of born from, and that's essentially what our SaaS is in a nutshell. Agency Runway is it's not fully released yet. It's still in kind of like the beta and build phase. But that's essentially what it's going to be. It's going to be an all-in-one kind of financial health dashboard for marketing agencies specifically, to give you top-line views on, what your margins are, and then also being able to dive into actual clients as well and see like, oh, okay, our gross profit margin, for example, might be, target might be 60%, and we can see that, client X here is actually falling under that. Or we can see that, other things within the agency, like such as our lifetime value is decreased, or our average order value isn't as high as it was or as high as we thought it would be. So again, it's just having views on those metrics, in a all-in-one dashboard that's easy to view, that doesn't require constant updating of a Google sheet.
Yeah, I've got it. And how did you find the process of building that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been challenging. Obviously, building any kind of like financial, reporting software, I think comes with a lot of challenges. I'm not the technical, founder. So my co-founder is the technical co-founder. So he'll be able to talk to you a little bit more on detail about that. But yeah, essentially there's lots of things to pass. So we've even got the FCA regulations in the UK that we'd have to pass. So that was a bit of a stick in the road, and we'll be launching in the US first because of that. And then we'll probably be doing proof of concept and everything in the US first before we then look to, make the move over to the UK and get the FTC compliance.
Yeah. So regulation throttling small businesses yet again.
Yeah, exactly. It's different in terms of how it works.
Yeah.
Individual countries.
And I guess next question on that is just where can people hear more, and when are you guys kind of going beyond beta and kind of launching it, opening the doors to the public?
Yeah, so hopefully we're launching soon, actually. So we're hoping by the end of Q1, maybe start of Q2, we'll be ready for our initial launch. You keep up to date on socials from me. I'll be talking about it on LinkedIn, I'm sure, and maybe Twitter. But we'll be pushing it out there. So yeah, that's probably where we'll be going in terms of going live date. That's hopefully going to be the date. Obviously, we want to make sure that it's in a complete place, where it's ready to go. Of course, it's being a financial reporting tool. Everything has to be bang on and correct. Otherwise, it's useless. So
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest things.
Okay, interesting. And look, Brad, I want to end it there. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but thank you for joining us today. Really good to have you on. Where can people hear more from you?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, mate. Really appreciate it, and it's been great to chat. So, where people can hear more from me, trying to be a lot more active on LinkedIn now after a hiatus for a long time. Here and there, use Twitter for just general kind of maybe less business focused stuff. But yeah, LinkedIn's probably where you're gonna see most of my content coming for this year for sure.
Cool. And last question for Vast. What is the kind of ideal focus? If an ecom brand is listening, what kind of ICP are you targeting, and what are you helping them to do?
Yeah, so we're targeting brands that are doing, over 100K in MRR. What we're helping them to do is to actually go deep on their numbers to identify, what their KPIs are around new customer acquisition and then drive profitable growth with that. So, we're extremely confident now that, we can either come on board with a brand and, spend what they're currently spending, but make it more efficient, or we can actually help them to, spend more and, still be, very efficient and do that profitably. That's kind of our main focus, is to just come on and be that kind of new customer acquisition partner and take care of the front end completely.
And I think that's a piece in the industry that's like sorely missed. A lot of agencies, just focus on one piece. And if you want that full stack kind of acquisition partner, Vast, you guys. Brad, thank you for jumping on. It's great speaking with you. And thanks everyone for listening.
Sound, mate. Appreciate it.